Okay, we're
rant.
live,
If I
we
wanna
can
go on a
hardly contain
rant.
ourselves. We're still talking among ourselves as if we didn't have a show. We do have a show, okay? And this is called, what's this called? Community Matters, right?
Yes.
Carol? It's just, okay.
I think so.
It's about living legend lawyers, or otherwise known as the 3D lawyers. It's a great story of Hawaii. It's a historical story. It will go down in the books as a special moment for the Bar Association, for the lawyers, for that matter, for the history of the state, post-statehood. A remarkable story. They should make a book out of it. They should make a movie out of it. Wait, it was a movie. Okay. To my far left, Greg Markham, who is the president of the Hawaii State Bar Association and who looms large in this story, and Carol Mon Lee, vice president of ThinkTech and a former associate dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law, who also looms large in this story. Okay. Say hi, you guys.
Hi. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay.
I knew you'd say that. So the first part of our story, and by the way, if anybody out there has a question, a comment, you want to talk about the Bar Association or lawyers or our movie or older lawyers like living legend lawyers, you can leave us a tweet, okay? And that would be at ThinkTech HI, ThinkTech Hawaii. All right, so let's begin by starting the story at the beginning. And that would be Greg, because Greg came up with this idea to have a movie about living legend lawyers, the 3D lawyers. Behind the 3D Project is the official title of our show today. And 3D means 3 digits, but let you explain it, Greg.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Well, I'm a 4-digit lawyer, having a bar number in the 3000s. And when I first started practicing law in 1983 here in Hawaii, there were still a lot of 3-digit lawyers that were active, practicing, and a lot of them were on the bench. And they carried with them a certain moxie and level of experience.
Je ne sais quoi.
Yes, indeed, that too. And they commanded respect, they demanded it, they also earned it. In many cases, they were veterans of World War II and deserved all the respect we could give them. And I was just kind of enthralled with the notion that they had been here when the territory became a state. And thought, then, as I did later, that their stories would be interesting to know and interesting to archive. Now, the genesis of the notion of doing that, even though I had that affinity to those 3 guys, has to do with the fact that my mom has a PhD in education, in particular in museum education, and oral histories are a very important part of preserving history. And so I thought this will be our 3D oral history project, and these stories will be told. And if they're not done in this media and in this way, they won't be told. They'll die with the 3-digit lawyer who has the story. So I wanted to get that before that happened.
Yeah, what a great idea.
Thank you.
It hadn't been done before either.
Not in this state and not in this context. It's been done many times over time. The notion of these oral histories. It was done way back when ex-slaves couldn't read or write. The only way they could communicate was in spoken words. So there was oral histories made. They were taped, not videotaped.
Back in those days, when slaves were around, and then, video would have been very helpful.
Would have been
I think
fantastic.
we'd all be better off if they had video.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine a cell phone that took video that you could just whip out at any moment? It would have been wonderful. So it starts there well, I don't know if it starts there, but at least the concept is known then, because these weren't video, obviously. They were just oral recordings, and some of them were in vinyl or wax. But fascinating. Ken Burns plays a lot of it during his Civil War series and others.
It's on now. Yeah, that's a fabulous movie.
Right. And then of course, my own personal interest in the oral history was kind of sparked by Marie Sandos's oral histories that she took of the participants that were still alive in the 20s and 30s living on the Pine Ridge, at the Pine Ridge Agency in South Dakota, who took part in the Custer Battle. Their story had never been told, and the U.S. military version couldn't be told because they were all dead. So the only version of the battle that could be accurate would be that of the Sioux. And the Sioux weren't asked, and they weren't talking until Marie Sandoz shows up on the Pine Ridge Agency, the Rosebud Agency in South Dakota in the 20s and 30s, and starts asking questions. Who's still here that fought in that battle? They're identified, and then she starts asking questions of where were you, what were you doing, where was Long Hair, where was Reno, why, what? And that's fantastic. I mean, that's just wonderful. It's the only version we have. So I thought, I could tie it all back to Crazy Horse, if you will, and I thought it would be
You
fun.
heard it here on ThinkTech. We didn't know this. Carol, did you know this?
No, I didn't know it at all.
This.
Fascinating.
Crazy
Thanks.
Horse. Okay. An American special, an American unique. Okay, so you took this idea. It was formed up in your years of practice and in your background and your family, I suppose.
Yes.
And you were the president-elect of the Bar Association last year, 2014, and you took the idea. What did you do with the idea? What did you have to achieve with the idea?
So, yes, okay. So I thought it'd be a good idea, and I thought it'd be something that we could do as a project during my term that would have some, importance and maybe some lasting importance. And I needed, to get the board on board because it would take a lot of effort and some money. But I also had to fit it into a goal group. At the HSBA, we don't do things just because they're good ideas. We have to do things that further our mission and our goals. And so I had to find the goal that this would further, and we did. And so when we matched the goal and to the mission and then talked to the board and sold them on the idea, they provided the funding and we got approval, unanimous approval, not a single holdout, to undertake the project. And I think we started in August or September of 2014.
Yeah, just about,
Went for about a
year ago. Yeah. So, and so the idea was that ThinkTech, we are so proud and feeling very prestige all over us about this. Yeah. So ThinkTech was selected to make movies of the people in the 3D group, the 3D lawyers, over a period of almost a year. And then those movies would be edited into one short movie to be played at the Bar Association dinner in August 2015, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, wonderfully edited. Your staff and you, Jay, did a great job on the editing. And I also hadn't given this as much forethought as I probably should have. It makes it, in retrospect, it all sounds like this grand, well thought out plan. But the fact of the matter is that you're a 3-digit lawyer. And the idea that this was ThinkTech and that you're a 3D lawyer and this was going to be about 3D lawyers was even an added bonus, because we knew that you would invest a lot of yourself into the project, and you did, and we really appreciate that. Also, not having this part of the grand master plan, but it obviously quickly dawned on me as president that at our annual dinner, which is our big fundraiser held once a year, that these 3D lawyers could be the honorees, and we could sell tickets to them, their families, friends, and law partners and current law firms that they're still associated with, to come to the dinner. And this might be a great draw. Well, as it turns out, it was. And we sold 52 tables to the bar dinner, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah.
We had over 500 people, and it was a great success.
Yeah. And we had nice comments, and everybody, I saw people for a week or 2 weeks after that, and everybody said, "Oh, nice, yeah, good."
So did
yeah.
I. Even the ones that weren't there, but knew that they
It's true.
had been up on the big screen, and they commented, "Well, I wasn't there, but I understood. I was on the screen, and I really thank you for that, and it was wonderful to do."
So this was a project from start to finish of almost 2 years. You had to campaign for it, you had to organize it in the Bar Association, and then you had to come down a number of times and act as the host in these shows, or organize other lawyers to come down and act as the host. This was something you had to put plenty of time into.
Right, and it was a labor of love, and it was a lot of fun doing, and a lot of gratification out of it. The comment you made about the 2-year process. So the way the HSBA is set up for institutional reasons is that when you're elected as a vice president. So you serve as vice president, president-elect, and then president. So I had that basically 3-year run at this, or 2-year run at this, and then 3rd year as president, ability to kind of get this together and then get it done in my term, even though we started it when I was president-elect.
Yeah.
So that was one of the nice things about that commitment, that 3-year commitment.
Well, we're going to take a short break now, and then we'll come back and talk to Carol about exactly how it got done. All the successes and the challenges, and what we learned in the middle of this 1-year, effort. Get all those guys down here and to put them behind the table and to get them in a roughly parallel conversation. That was not easy, and you'll learn how to do it from Carol. Okay, then you can do it yourself. Don't do this at home. Okay, this is ThinkTech. We're doing community matters. We're talking about living legend lawyers with Greg Markham and Carol Mon Lee. We'll be right back.
Okay. Hi, my name's Cindy Matsuki, and I host the show High Growth with HTDC on ThinkTech Hawaii. This is the show where we talk about all things tech, innovation, entrepreneurship, and manufacturing, because there's so many things going on in Hawaii and more people should know about them. So this is the program that you can come and find out about all the things happening in Hawaii. And this show also airs on Olelo 54 along with ThinkTech Hawaii. And it broadcasts live every other Tuesday at 3 p.m. So don't forget, check out the show Tuesday, 3 p.m. every other week. High Growth with HTDC. Thanks.
Aloha, how you doing? I'm Gordo the Tech Czar here on ThinkTech Hawaii, where we co-host Hibachi Talk, where we talk about technology and bring in all kinds of cool guests. Also, my co-host with me today is
Andrew the security guy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching ThinkTech Hawaii, and thanks for watching Hibachi Talk. We also have Angus.
And you there, lad. It's Angus. I bring in all kinds of wee things. Oh, look, you see my lips moving.
We're back, we're live, we're here, we know more about Crazy Horse than we ever knew before. Crazy Horse is, intrinsically involved in this whole thing, which we didn't know that either. Okay? So we talked a moment ago about how this idea came up and all the factors that led it to gel in Greg's brain and advance it and advocate for it at the Bar Association and then actually implement it, which is largely due to his efforts. Now we're going to talk about how we put it together, because Carol Mon Lee spent an unbelievable amount of time arranging it, talking to all the people involved, making sure they understood what they were getting into when they came in the studio, structuring their experience here. And finally, she was heavily involved in making the movie itself, which, God, it seems like only yesterday. It was only yesterday. So Carol, tell us, what was it like?
Well, there were a lot of logistics issues, in part because we're talking about probably not 999 lawyers, the 3 digits, but actually about 899, because I think the numbering system started at 100. Now, of course, of those 900 lawyers, they're not all with us anymore. Some have moved to the mainland. So a lot of it had to do with how are we going to fit in interviewing as many lawyers as possible over a period of time so that by a certain date we would have enough raw material to edit the movie for showing in August. So we developed a schedule which involved 22 different shows over a course of 10, 11 months, every other Tuesday for those 22 periods, and interviewed between 2 and I think our last show we had a record number of 6 different lawyers. So logistically, we met here at the studio every other Tuesday. We were very lucky that we decided as hosts we would use, of course, Greg as the bar president, but also we would alternate with other former bar presidents. So we included Calvin Young, who is last year's bar president, Greg Wagnall, who was president right before Calvin, Sherry Broder, who was actually the first woman bar president, and also Howard Luke, who had done some work as a bar board member.
And now running for bar president.
Is he
Yeah.
running?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah, we knew
wonderful.
that, yeah.
So the 5 of them hosted different programs and also helped us line up some of the guests. In addition to that support group, we had a wonderful group of 4 young lawyers who are part of the HSBA, I believe it's called the Leadership Program.
Leadership Institute.
Yes, the
Yes.
Leadership Institute. And part of their role was to work with us on every week in terms of lining up, preparing, actually coming to the studio and being involved in the filming and helping to select those portions of each show that we were going to use as the basis for then a tighter edit. So each one of them did a lot of work. And of course, the Bar Association with Pat, the director of the bar, helped a lot in the logistics.
Pat now.
Pat Maushmitsu. So logistically, because of the age of some of the three-digit lawyers, we had some issues in terms of transportation, hearing, actually the ability to, feel ready to participate in a program like this. Some of them were less interested, so that was a choice that we had to make as to who actually was able to come down. But as Greg mentioned to us outside of the program, that there were many lawyers who after the program had wished that they had participated.
Yeah.
And of course, in the end, we only were able to interview a total of 61 out of all of the three-digit lawyers. And so those 61 have been memorialized now and forever and in our program. A couple of the things that came up in terms of scheduling. One is that, I am also a member of the bar. I'm a 4-digit lawyer like Greg, unlike you, 4-digit. But I became a member of the bar in 1976, the Hawaii bar. No, actually 1977, the Hawaii bar. And there were very few women lawyers in those days. There were about 100 because I used to do the mailing list for 100 Hawaii women lawyers. So I wanted to identify women lawyers who were 3-digit lawyers. And what we found was there were so few women who were 3-digit lawyers who were either still around or who were able to come and participate. One was Sonia Faust, who was interested in participating and sadly passed away actually the day before the show. We did find some wonderful 3-digit women lawyers. And the other interesting thing I thought that came out was the fact that in those days, the 3-digit period, Asian lawyers were really not that accepted in law practice.
I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Before
we made this movie, did
I
you know
wasn't
that?
that aware of it. I wasn't quite
Yeah,
that aware of
yeah,
it.
it was really
It was
extraordinary.
very extraordinary. And as you'll recall in the film, Ray Tam talked about how he, who during law school had clerked for insurance defense companies and had expected fully graduating from law school to get a job in one of the insurance defense companies here, and was turned down by all of them. And so he decided he was going to work on the other side and became a plaintiff's lawyer. And as he says, it was the best decision of his life.
It was the worst decision for the insurance
Yes,
companies.
I
though.
think they regret that
Countless
now.
millions of dollars of verdicts later.
That's
they
right.
probably regretted their action.
Right. But we heard lots of really fascinating stories like that over the course of the 22 weeks of the interviews
Yeah.
that are now saved for the future, for future lawyers to see.
Yeah. Well, I just one other story about Asian lawyers. It was Vernon Shar came back. He
Yes.
spoke about this. It was very touching to me. He came back from Harvard Law School, and he went to the white shoe firms.
Yes.
And they said, oh, you're a great guy, great applicant, but, we couldn't explain it to our clientele that we hired an Asian person. So no job for you here.
Yeah.
He wasn't angry, but it was just a remarkable scenario.
Right.
And I started practicing not too long after that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that necessarily. I was looking for a chop suey firm anyway.
Mm-hmm,
You know that term?
Yes.
Yeah. and so I lived in a world of chop suey, and my firm lived in a world of chop suey, and it was just remarkable to hear Vernon talk about that. It was really shocking, actually, that could happen here in Hawaii. We always think of Hawaii as a place of diversity, of acceptance, and here's a story that's written in the history
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
about what happened.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to see some of them come
Right.
up with the statements they made.
Right. Well, we did also, in trying to get full representation of the three-digit lawyers, was we definitely wanted to include the neighbor islands. So we had shows with lawyers from the Big Island, from Kauai, and from Maui. So we flew them in. We also, of course, wanted a range of practice. So we had themes, whether it was country lawyers or business lawyers, or lawyers in politics, lawyers in corporate work, lawyers in banking. So we wanted to at least, even though we couldn't interview all of the lawyers, at least have a representation of the types of practice that the three-digit lawyers went into.
Yeah, that was a good move to group them by
Yeah.
some subject, some
Some
category,
theme.
another. Very good.
With the help.
With the help, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a collaborative effort for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was, let's see, as I hear you talking about it, I remember some of the issues and challenges that we had in making it all happen. I mean, for example, you touched on this, is these guys, some of them are in their 90s.
Yes.
And first of all, it's a physical issue to come
Yes.
out of your house, downtown, come into a studio with all these wires and obstacles and whatnot. And then talk about your life, and not know exactly what the questions would be. And lawyers are always afraid of. Lawyers make the worst deposition witnesses of all. Worried about what you'd be asked something that would embarrass you, or you'd say something inadvertent would embarrass you, and they must have all had some kind of concern about that. The little ones and the big ones. Everybody must have had some kind of concern about exposing themselves. This is why not everybody showed up. This is why some people were reluctant. And even the ones who came, at least a good number of them, I think, had that same concern. And you dealt with that. You talked to them, you softened the edges for them, you explained what the context was. And so by the time they sat at the table, they were reasonably comfortable. This is a big part of making a talk show video.
And you being a three-digit, you were also interviewed?
Yeah, Sherry Broder interviewed me.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember with who.
Phil Chang.
Yeah, Phil Chang on the one side. Oh, and Ed Burke on the other side.
Yes. Right.
And it was about the path other than the law, which
Right.
I found a
Right.
very interesting category for us to be in.
Right, right.
And that was an interesting show for me.
was a good show.
Yeah.
So, I think all these shows were very interesting. Some of them went this direction, some of them went that direction. Some of them, we wound up having a couple of guys talk about their life in the war,
Right.
which was always like stunning. Wait a minute, you were involved in World War II? I don't know anybody who was actually involved, was alive today in World War II. And then the story, what was it? I forget who had the story of
Jim Case?
Jim Case.
Jim and Dan.
Jim
Jim
and
and
Dan.
Dan.
Oh, that was a great story.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I
Please,
share
please,
that?
please.
Because I did the interview and I saw the tears in their eyes as they explained that they had worked for large Howley law firms, at least at the beginning before they integrated, as we talked about, and would have been or should have been competitors. And for all the years that they practiced in different large Howley law firms in downtown Honolulu, they never talked about it, but it was understood intrinsically that they would not compete for the same clients. And it wasn't until this show involving them that they admitted it and said it to each other with tears in their eyes and explained it. And I was sitting right next to them and I saw it, that even though they never talked about it until that show, it was understood that they would not do that, and they didn't.
So this was the period of blending, if you will. When the period started, you had people in a generation who had been involved in the war, the plantations, the pre-statehood life of the islands. And then, as the period, and the period of the three-digit lawyers went into the 70s, way into the 70s. So it stretched over a fair time.
Actually, it ended in 1970, because number 1,000,
Ken Robbins.
Ken Robbins was
1970. All right.
Okay.
I was 720 and I was 1968.
Right.
Just 2 years earlier.
Right,
That's what
right.
happened.
Yeah.
But this was a time when the state was going through changes. This was a time when outside investment was increasing. This is a time when we were flexing our muscle as a new state, where there was lots of development, lots of construction, lots of real estate activity, and we were coming together racially, culturally. The Bar Association was going through changes just as the state was going through changes. So to catch this generation is to catch a historical moment
Yes.
in the state's history. It's no less historical than various other things we have studied about Hawaii history. And it has not yet been known as well as it is right now.
Yeah. One of our guests was a former Attorney General, and he talked, the state of Hawaii, and he talked about how there had been laws on the books that until statehood weren't enforced. And I think they decided, well, now that we're a state, I guess we need to enforce some of these laws.
Perfect.
Yeah, which I thought was fantastic commentary.
You're right, it's a whole attitudinal shift as well. Look at the law, look at the state, look at the relation of the lawyers, the judges. The whole political structure was changing in this generation. So, gee, I wish we could do it again. We'd find even more there.
It'd be fun to pick up more of the
Yeah.
3D guys to
Yeah,
continue
it
continue the interviews, because they're out there. And the show did build momentum. I mean, one of the reasons I think we had 6 people come to the last show, some of which weren't formally invited, they were just told by their friends they were doing a 3D show and they came, is that the show had picked up a lot of momentum. If we'd continued it for another few months, we might have had 6 people come to the next, every other week tapings until we might have gotten more than 61 to come.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, it was very touching to see them come down. And there was, I forget who it was, maybe Jim Campbell, was it, who had heard about it. And he did not say that he would come, but then he simply came.
Right.
And he was all, involved. It was imbued with it. It became a channel for him to talk about his life before. And even though it only, was a 45-minute show, all those guys had very, very tonic experiences in talking about their past. The other thing I want to mention is I sat next to Ed Bendett, my partner of how many years now, at the Saturday night bar dinner.
Oh, great.
And what was really interesting is that he and I, between the two of us, we knew most of them, if not all of them, actually. They were the community for us.
Yeah.
Sure.
And some of them were our adversaries, but we knew them and we enjoyed the practice with them. And it took us back to old times, the notion of whether things were more civil then or less,
Right.
whether the judges were better or worse, whether the experience of practicing was more nutritious or less.
No emails. Back
Right.
then, we had a lot of that technological stuff discussed.
Well, one of the things I remembered was that I believe it was Carol Taylor who said that he was in practice, of course, in a different firm than you, but that he was going to be working with another lawyer on a case, and he asked if it could be you because you had the only fax machine in town.
Always,
I'm sure there were other reasons.
Jay's
but-
always been cutting edge
I know,
technologically.
I know.
Yeah. But it's interesting, Jay, that you say that about that dinner, the bar dinner, because to continue this crazy horse analogy, I kind of thought of it as, maybe a little nostalgically, but I kind of thought of it as the last buffalo hunt, or these guys were all together in one room and seeing each other. In many cases, they hadn't seen each other in years, probably for the last time in that kind of context.
You're right. And it's a sad thing. It's like the Shoah Project, Steven Spielberg's Shoah Project, of interviewing Holocaust survivors. They're not going to last much longer. And as you said, Carol, it's a memorialization because they're going to pass soon enough. And so you are capturing it, but you're also giving them the experience of being involved in this great big sort of group photo kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. We should have done that. We should have done a group photo of all of them at the bar dinner.
Couldn't have gotten them together.
Yeah.
The problem,
Yeah.
Well, let's take a short break and come back, and then we'll talk about the lessons we learned in terms of getting a project like this done, and what it means in the larger sense to the Bar Association and the relationships of lawyers in our state. Many of whom, came to that dinner and had no idea who that generation was, no idea whatsoever. It taught them something. Let's discuss what that was. So that's Greg Markham on my far left and Carol Mon Lee. Here we are talking about living legend lawyers, the 3D generation, if you will. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Stan Osserman, and I host the show every Friday here on ThinkTech Hawaii called Stan the Energy Man. We talk about everything energy, from anaerobic digesters to batteries to hydrogen fuel cell and grid power. And we do that to keep you informed on the latest technology that's out there and the things that are going on in Hawaii. We broadcast every Friday from noon until 1 o'clock, and I hope you'll tune in. So sometimes we'll be on ThinkTech, and sometimes we'll be on Olelo Channel 54, and I'd like you to listen in to me and join me every Friday. We'll see you then. Aloha.
We're back. We're live. We're here with Greg Markham and Carol Mon Lee, both of whom participated. Well, Greg was the originator, and Carol and I participated in the making of the movie about the 3D lawyers, meaning your bar number is less than 1,000. The Living Legend Lawyers, which was really a kind of a remarkable idea, a remarkable event. And you know, myself, I don't want it to stop. I don't want it to go away. More than just ThinkTech participating, it doesn't matter who participates and makes the movie. But I think there's something that happened there. You know, the funny thing is you practice law, you have adversary lawyers every day. In bigger cities, it's more pronounced. In the smaller cities, we have this modicum of aloha and civility, which sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. And you go through a lifetime of practice, and what is exactly your relationship with the body of the bar? And this movie, to me, was historic. Your idea, Greg, was historic in that it really examined that relationship, the community relationship. It's not only in the context of the history of it, but it's in the context of what are we doing with each other? Are we aloha, if you will, in the context of the development of our legal organization, our legal professionals, and thus, ultimately, the quality of justice here. What do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think many lawyers kind of exist, they think in their own little universe and don't really see the big picture of their part of an association. And I think this kind of underscored that for those guys. It reminded them of that. I think they felt part of an organization. I'm not sure the young lawyers do. Unless they're involved in the Young Lawyers Division of the HSBA or some section in the HSBA, I'm not sure they feel that connection, because they're up at 10,000 plus now, Jay. They're getting close to 11,000 in bar number, which is a lot. And I'm not sure they have the same connection or feeling of community that those people did. And I'm hoping that part of the lesson of the movie is to remind them that they are part of an organization and they have a shared history. They work together. And I hope that they're reminded of that, and they're civil and take pride in that.
Yeah.
And
Carol?
in addition to that, I think it's really important for the current lawyers, the current members of the bar, to understand that they didn't get to where they are today, where you can assume that all women and Asians and minorities and whatever ethnic group or whatever background you have can assume to become a partner in a law firm, a judge, a president of a company, just because you have your law degree. And although that is pretty much the situation today, that most people have a sense of entitlement. Of course, I'm going to join a firm and someday I'll be a partner. But during the 3-digit days, Asian women had no expectation they would even be hired. So I think that that's a huge lesson of history that today's young lawyers can look to understand that they didn't get to where they are today by themselves. They really got there today on the backs of all of these 3-digit lawyers who helped break so many barriers for us and those who are following us.
You know, but this raises in me the whole career track thing. You know, one of the things that a lawyer doesn't have when he gets out of law school is an idea about how his career is going to go. And here's a generation that some of them had spectacular careers. Some of them had very challenging experiences. Some of them, you know, this way, that way. But we heard them. We heard them unfold their careers. We heard them have expectations that were met or not, have expectations that were, far more modest than they should have been. We heard about the development of these firms, these really powerful firms over time, and how they came together, lost people, found people, did big things a little, and it was really a window on the careers that came for these people in this generation. And if I were a young lawyer just attending that dinner, see that happen, you had to look at the movie for beyond exactly what they said. You had to see behind it, and then you would see some really extraordinary things about lives and being. I was so impressed with some of the firms they talked about the history of the firms, the relationships between their partners. Some of it is going to be a little bit softened for the public, but if you listened carefully, you could feel that midnight oil. You could feel them working so hard and struggling with the workload and the cases, dealing with their senior partners and their lateral partners, and it was a tremendous education for a young lawyer, I think.
I think some of them also talked about their monthly salaries at anywhere from $150 to $300 a month. And those who were talking about their salaries being $300 a month were pretty doggone proud of that, because they were making a lot of money. And I think the young lawyers at the bar dinner were stunned. They couldn't believe it. The hours
Now
they're
it's
putting in.
$300 an hour.
Yeah, right. Right, so that was, perspective, I think, was really interesting for the young lawyers to see.
But you know what? The most salient thing for me, from the day I heard about this project from you till now, and I still feel this very strongly, is that the bar doesn't necessarily express to its members that the bar as an organization, that lawyers in general care about other lawyers. They care about how their lives go. They care about how these careers unfold. They care about the quality of daily practice. What you did, Greg, made me think that somebody cared. It's not just for the 3D lawyers too. It's just a matter of the organization in general. The body of lawyers cares about every individual lawyer. This is something of note.
That's nice. Thank you, Jay.
Well, what were the problems going forward? What would you do differently on this? What would you do differently in conceiving it, in dealing with the Bar Association, dealing with the people who participated, the technical issues? How would you improve it the next time over?
Well, of course, there's always time and preparing for a show every 2 weeks and lining up the guests. And as we learned is that even though we may identify guests for 2 weeks from now, whether they are actually available the day before is another question. So then we were always ready to substitute or make changes and to make sure that we had people who were helping them come to the studio or reminding them about the different issues. So I think that that's a function of, the type of program that we were running.
Yeah.
So that would have been more helpful. But
I think I agree with you, Carol. I also think in retrospect, with the advantage of hindsight, that we probably could have scheduled 5 or 6 per session, with the expectation that they might not all come, but if they did, 2 of them could sit out in the waiting room, and after 15 minutes bring them in and shuffle the other 2 out, and we would have gotten more stories. We would have gotten, instead of 61, we might have gotten 70 or more, and that would have been a good thing.
Yeah. Sometimes they were reserved by the size of the crowd behind the table. Yeah.
Right. So we had. I think I would have changed that. I would have lined up more than 3, and just dealt with whatever showed up.
Yeah.
And I think it would have worked.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's
I
hindsight.
agree with you. But well, we can do this again. It's theoretically possible.
Well, yeah.
technically, the other thing is that in the beginning, and John Jubinski was great because he and Vernon Shar, the first show, they brought in pictures and drawings that we were able to load up. But logistically, it became a problem for 22 shows to ask them to, each person to bring in a picture or two. A few people brought in a lot, which we couldn't use, and most
The
didn't
family
bring in
album,
anything.
you know.
Right, exactly. So, to visually make it more appealing, it would have been fun to have had a few pictures, and if we had, again, the function of time, more time to select which pictures, had it in time to load it up, and that might have added a little more color. An expanded series would be great someday if we could get their pictures.
If you could see Carol hunched over the computer with Michael Rodriguez, who did the editing on
With
most
me,
of this.
yeah, he was great.
He was great.
Yeah.
And if you could see the two of them working together for hours, every frame, every grimace, every word,
second.
every second.
Second,
Yes.
yeah, no, it was action-packed, and it was a
It
fabulous.
really moved along.
Yeah.
Fabulous movie. It was 28 minutes, seemed like eight
Yeah.
minutes.
Did go
And the
very fast.
crowd, I should explain that this over 500 folks, they were pretty talkative as a group. Well, you get 500 lawyers together in a room, you can imagine how much talking there is. And to get them quieted down to listen to anything was difficult. I spoke a little bit, nobody listened. When that movie started, the room was silent.
You're
and
right.
It
They
was.
listened to everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they started to mill about a little bit and started their conversations a little bit when the credits began to roll. And then there was that little
PS.
gem at the end, a little
Yes.
PS, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And the room went silent again as they listened to Justice Duffy
Yeah.
talk about the art of the healing arts and how lawyers
Peacemakers.
are the peacemakers.
Right.
And it was just a perfect ending.
Yeah.
And it was the only time in the whole night that 500 lawyers closed their mouths and listened.
Yeah, Carol selected that piece. That was
Great
a
piece.
beautiful
Well,
piece.
I had some suggestions, but one thing that we did do too, which was fun, was we were able to get from the Bar Association their pictures, each of the individual 61 lawyers from during your heyday, so when you practiced the bar in the 70s. And so we used pictures of each of the 61 lawyers and to see them in their prime.
Yeah,
Black and
as
white
young-
pictures,
young
of course.
people, yeah.
They had hair and
Let me do the
Dark
math.
hair.
Some of them didn't wear glasses.
That was
Dark hair.
45 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was fun. and
That
it
was
rolled.
fun, yeah.
But before we close, you guys, I just want to ask you one thing. What is the future of the 3D Lawyer Project? I mean, is this it? Is that the end of your term? A great legacy, Greg, and you will be remembered for this. I don't know what else you did as president of the bar, but this one is super duper, and you will be remembered for this. But question, will it happen again? Should it happen again? How can we make it happen again?
Well, I would love to see the rest of the 3D lawyers that were willing. I'd love to see them interviewed and be part of an ongoing effort. The next logical extension, because of the lack of women in that era, they just didn't go into law, or they weren't accepted to law school, and they certainly had a hard time getting jobs if they got over those two barriers. It would be great to get the women's perspective on when those barriers were broken and they did the first jury trial for rape or murder or for some major case of a corporation, defense of a corporation or whatever, first successful woman plaintiff's attorney in the private sector and civil side. That's a story to be told. And then after that, I don't know, because the 3D generation covered from before World War II to after Vietnam, or during, up to Vietnam.
1970.
It was just, it's hard to imagine a richer period in state history than that. Because our state was so involved in the Vietnam War, was so involved in World War II, and we were so involved in the transition from territorial status to statehood. It's hard to imagine that the 3,000 numbered lawyers or the 5,000 numbered lawyers are going to have anything in their span that will match that great change. I don't know. I mean, it may occur. It may occur. I just can't foresee it at this point.
It may be hard, but it would be worth digging for. Who knows what we will
Well,
find.
I think though, and I have, because of your suggestions, I have met with the current presidents of Hawaii Women Lawyers and Hawaii Women's Legal Foundation about putting together a proposal for their boards to to review about doing something similar like this. But, you know, the periods of the 60s and the 70s when I was in college and in law school, 60s, and that's when my bar number was 1932. So as I mentioned, there were 100 women lawyers in 1976. So we all became lawyers, and those became lawyers in the 70s. We're really a product of the women's movement, civil rights, gay rights. There was a lot going on in our country. And so even though we were not as involved in World War II, we weren't born, certainly I think women were involved as those important developments in our history took place, and where women had roles in them and expanded and pushed those forefronts, those frontiers, and became important.
And that's exactly why I think that story needs to be told, and the sooner the better.
Thank you, Greg. Greg Markham, President of the Hawaii State Bar Association, Carol Mon Lee, Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of ThinkTech and former Associate Dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law. Thank you so much, not only for today, but for the whole enchilada. It's been wonderful working with you guys.
Great working with the two of you as well.
Thanks.
Couldn't have done it without you, both.